And we're live. You're muted there, Quentin.
I'm so glad we started recording before that, because that's going to last in infamy now. Welcome, everyone. Is that what I was saying? Welcome to our final closing ceremonies, Changemaker Residency Week. We're so thrilled that you're able to join us today for what's going to be a really, really special session, something we're really, really proud to be able to share with you. We hope you've had a really wonderful week of immense, mind-blowing sort of sessions and facilitators. I know that as one of the facilitators and also as a participant in other sessions, it's been absolutely memorable for me. So we hope that's been the same for you. Before we get going today, we want to just give a little bit of an overview of how it's going to go. So first of all, we're going to have a little bit of Q&A. We're going to have a little bit of Webex etiquette that we're going to toss to Sean. He's going to talk a little bit about what our limitations are in terms of the Webex live event. Then we're going to do a few opening remarks. We'll introduce Evan. He'll perform his session, which is going to be magical. And then during the session, you can offer your own questions into the chat. Sean will talk a little bit about this, and we'll make sure that towards the end, we'll pull out the ones we can answer and we'll offer them up to Evan. So with that, I'll toss it over to you, Sean, just to give a little bit of a tip or two around our WebEx platform today.
Thanks, Evan. Sorry, Quentin. So that everyone is aware, you are unable to turn your camera on as an attendee. We've removed that ability to reduce the network, the tax on the network, and comments and questions are appreciated and accepted, and you can do that within the chat function. Just a reminder that if you could ensure that your comments and questions are directed to everybody, you may have to click the drop-down menu, and I believe it's in the middle. There is an everyone selection. Just ensure that that is selected before sending a comment, and I believe Quentin will be selecting or collecting questions to administer later. Back to you, sir.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks so much. Appreciate that little tip. And we do have to give a shout out to Sean and the whole media services team for setting us up for today, making this actual possible. We have a lot of gratitude for that. So as we like to start off every single session here at Changemaker Residency Week, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. And in the chat right now, I'm going to drop the Georgian College land acknowledgement. But I think there's a really great space to reflect a little bit. After this week, I feel like personally, I've learned more about my relationship to the land and land acknowledgements in general in the past week than I have in my entire lifetime. And I realize I've only begun to scratch the surface of that needing to learn and unlearn. And I have a lot of gratitude towards Emma, Jill, and the Indigenous Services team for sharing so much knowledge and insight with me so I can really and truthfully begin my own journey on that. Think back to the first session with Emma and Jill, and Emma asked us to do a visualization exercise of our own communion to the land. And I realized when I was thinking about it that this was actually the first time that I actually thought about the land, but also felt the land at the same time. Many times I'd actually just been thinking about the land, or other times I was actually really present with the land and just sort of feeling it. And this was one of the first times I actually was able to meld both of them. And so in that moment of reflection, I had something really powerful sort of happen to me. And I'm going to borrow a phrase from our poetic artist, Evan, today, to say that I uttered a prayer and not the religious kind. So for me, I realized that in that moment that I have to honor the stewardship of the Haudenosaunee people whose traditional lands I'm currently on up near Aurelia. I will give back to the land as much as I actually receive, and I will take accountability for stewarding the land for future generations to benefit from. For me, the land is a gift. It's one that gives fully and unconditionally to me. And because I treasure that gift, I too need to give back without condition and with abundance. And so thank you, Gaia. I'm so excited to move forward and start to repay your generosity. And with that, I'd like to introduce Nicole Norris, the manager for the Center for Change Making Social Innovation, who's going to offer a few opening remarks before we move on with the program.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's so wonderful to see so many amazing faces after a wonderful week. Recognize many of the names. So first of all, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us for Changemaker in Residency Week. I'd like to give thanks for this session today to Emma Greenfield for helping us to organize, to Evan Redsky for joining us and coming along this journey with us, and more importantly, to our Indigenous services who are the reason we could make this happen. I really want to call that out. So this is a gift from the Indigenous Services to our Georgian community today. And so I hope you do enjoy. I'd like to thank you to the co-op team, to Vicky Ball behind the scenes, to Adam Dagenais, to Quentin Evans, to Laura Koza, to Jenna Stefanato, to Shayan. And I would also like to thank each and every one of you. I would like to thank Mike Zucchino, who helped us with Home Feast, Martin Rashawn behind the scenes. I just keep going on. Susie Addison, to our director. I would also like to thank Jessica Lovett's team, Joanne Foxton, the entire co-op team that has supported today. And so there's so many people to thank that have brought this to our community. And I would just like to just thank everybody. I just can't believe it. So on that note, I'd like to pass that back off to Quentin and bring Evan on. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So we're really fortunate and blessed today to, as Nicole sort of mentioned, to have Emma Greenfield with us. Emma is Indigenous specialist who can certainly introduce herself, but I know that she's also going to introduce Evan for us today. So I'm really thrilled to once again, for the third time this week, it feels like, be able to bring Emma and share her light with everyone a little bit. So over to you, Emma.
Oh, thank you so much. So grateful to be here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Indigenous Resurgence and Activism. So happy to be able to put this together. Indigenous Services really happy to have partnered on this to create this opportunity, and such a great way to end such an awesome week. It's been really, truly amazing. I'm so grateful to have been a part of it. I'm now going to introduce Evan Redsky. He's an Ojibway singer and songwriter from Blind River, Ontario, but he currently lives in Toronto. Having spent 5 years on the road with Juno-nominated rock group Single Mothers, he has since left to return to his Indigenous storytelling roots through painfully honest Americana stories straight from Canada's heartland. Evan will share his songs and explore how Indigenous artists are participating in Indigenous resurgence and activism, as well as how those who are listening in now can get involved. I'm honored to hand it over to you, Evan.
Thank you so much, Emma. Ani, everybody. Hello. My name is Evan Redsky. I'm from the Mississauga First Nation, about, I would say, 4 hours north of everyone at Georgian, about 6 hours north of me here in the city of Toronto. I'm Elk Clan, I'm Anishinaabe, specifically I'm Ojibway, and I am a singer-songwriter, writer, and in the last few years, more active in community as it relates to social issues within our community. And I just want to say I'm super grateful to be here. I'm super grateful to Georgian and the entire Indigenous Student Services team for having me today. And yeah, I can't wait to get into it and play a few songs for everyone here, as well as really get into the impetus behind my music and behind all the work that I do as an Indigenous artist, as a singer-songwriter. So yeah, I'm just gonna start by playing a song, and yeah, I can't wait to hear questions from everybody and be able to close off this incredible week and this journey that everyone's been on all week here at Georgian College. So Chimigwech, I'll say that off the top, and yeah, I'm gonna play everyone a song here. Before I get started, I was told to make sure music mode is on. Okay, thank you so much. I'm a Webex noob, but here we go. Thank you. force came, they didn't give it up to the weak kings or the state. They didn't disappear, now they're still here, taking back and reclaiming what was stripped away. They can hear your silence so clearly. We can hear your privilege taking shape. We can hear your silence so clearly. We can see your privilege taking shape. You can agree with the scholars, side with $1 million, but the spirit of this land has the last say. That won't ever change, despite the marketplace and the sanitized approach toward yesterday. We can hear your silence so clearly. We can see your privilege taking shape. We can hear your silence so clearly. We can hear your privilege taking shape. We can hear your silence so clearly. We can see your privilege taking shape. We can hear your silence so clearly. We can see your privilege taking shape. Well, thank you, everybody. That was a song that I wrote recently, a newer song called Taking Shape. And essentially, what I want to do here today is kind of tell you about where I'm from, about what it is that I do, and sort of get into like some of the nitty-gritty nuances of why I became a songwriter, my path and my journey to becoming a songwriter, and how my culture and my identity has played into that over the last, I just turned 30, but in the last 5 years, I really have rediscovered myself in my own stories, in my community, and in my music. So, yeah, we'll just rewind it a bit, and I'll just tell you, like, I grew up on a small reserve off Highway 17 called the Mississauga First Nation, not to be confused with Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto. But the Mississauga First Nation is on the northern side of Lake Huron. And I grew up there. I was born and raised my entire life. I grew up on the reserve, and I was surrounded by my community. I was surrounded by my culture. And, back then, in the 90s, early 2000s, it was a different place, so-called Canada and Ontario was a different place then. And, but like, I didn't think anything of it, as a kid running around the res, like I did my thing, I was always told to be outside, so I ran around in the bush. I got into trouble, when I started to become that age, and, sort of all the things that, like, it's weird to say, all the things that like you hear about res life. So by the time I came of age, I discovered, drugs and alcohol, and I could have went one of two ways at that point in my life. But the saving grace I had was music. I discovered music, and it really changed everything for me. This was the early days of the internet, and I don't know how much of, I know there's a lot of students here now, a lot of people at Georgian who might be just starting their studies. So I'm just a generation or two older, and this is early days of the internet, and Napster and LimeWire, and that's how I discovered music. And it was eye-opening for me, because up until that point, I sort of didn't really know who I was. I didn't really know my place, because I was floating in between busing into school every day to go to town, right? Very francophone community, Blind River, Ontario. And we had a lot of First Nations kids who got bussed in. And if it weren't for music and sports, for me, hockey was a big factor in my life. I think, I don't know where I'd have been today, because, I made friends through hockey, but I found myself through music. And when I was like 13 or 14, this connection, like the music I discovered, so punk rock, metal, like rap music, like that was all like so fascinating to me, and it gave me a sense of a community outside of my reserve, and it was like a light, I was sucked in. I was like, after I discovered music and bands like, early back then, Nirvana, and I listened to a lot of hip hop and metal, so it just set me on a path, and it gave me the confidence to pursue something and to be somebody. I've seen myself off. I didn't know it then, but I seen myself wanting to become a musician that was beyond just like the campfire jam or the casual pick up the guitar and play. Like I really, really wanted this, and by the time I got to college, I went to college in London, Ontario here. I went to Fanshawe College, and I studied theater. But what happened for me at that point, when I was about 18 years old, was I joined a band. I was playing around London. I was playing open mics in college pubs and stuff like that. But I had been writing music from the age of 13 till 18. And, what I'm so grateful for now is all that time that I had alone as a kid, like to hone my craft, to practice, and to throw everything at the wall. I wrote so many terrible songs. I wrote so many awful songs in that period of time. And one of my mentors, told me, he's like, you're getting all the bad songs out of your system right now, when I was 15, He's like, and I took that so hard at the time. I was like absolutely gutted. It's like, all the bad stuff, so all my songs are bad? Like, am I a terrible musician? Is this worth it? But what I was doing was I was finding my voice, and that journey started then. It started when I picked up the guitar and decided to start singing, right? And I would do cover songs and stuff like that, but I never felt connected to cover songs as much as I did writing my own music. So by the time I got to college, I, found some guys. They lived next door to me. They played drums and bass, and I had a guitar, and I decided to write my own music and join a band and have a college band. And by that point I was listening to bands like Dinosaur Jr. and Broken Social Scene. So I was like kind of in an indie rock band, but I crossed paths with a group, a punk rock group, pretty notorious group of Hellraisers at the time, and I fell in love with their music. I thought it was so awesome. I thought it was like so like visceral, and I'd already been into punk rock and hardcore music by then. Never played it, and I never played it because I always thought it was like, oh, that's for like, I hope this is safe to say here, that's for white boys in the city, right? Um, but there I found myself completely fascinated and enamored by this group. And we played a show together, and you know, one thing or another, and they asked me to join their band. They enjoyed the songs that I wrote. They liked how I played, and I took a chance on them. They took a chance on me, and that sort of sent me off into my career. Something that was a lot bigger than myself that I had no idea of at the time. And I want to show you guys a couple of these artifacts. Like early on, we had put out this record, which is a 7-inch record. It's called Wild Party. Leave it to a bunch of cis hetero guys at 19 to put out a punk rock album called Wild Party. But the local record label put us out on a 7-inch record, and I thought at the time, for a kid from a small reserve in Northern Ontario to be permanently pressed on a 7-inch album, I thought that was just the coolest thing. And I was so smitten. I was so grateful to be a part of this group. And what I didn't know before we put it out is that we would become the band in town, and we'd play gigs every weekend, and we'd have one big show like every month. And those 3 years I was in school, things picked up, and I sort of got distracted with the group, and I was almost in school by this point as a means to follow my dreams of playing music. And if it weren't for the support of my community back home helping me out to stay in school, I would have never been there. My mom would have easily have been like, you got to move back, you got to get a job, you don't have the time or the resources to focus on both school and playing music. And by the time I got to this was 2011 or 2012, we got signed to like an insane record label, and we put out two 7-inch records like this, and they were getting all kinds of buzz online and forums, like really nerdy stuff, like where like punk rockers go and live on the internet, right? But the spring that I graduated from college, we got a phone call that changed everything. And XL Recordings, for those of you who don't know XL Recordings, they have artists like Adele, Radiohead, Odd Future, and a lot of really other incredible artists like of late, like Slow Tie, Wiki, Trash Talk. There was just King Cruel, like so many incredible artists that I admired, I respected, and I feared, because I was like, these people are so incredible at what they do, and to be in the same league and be in the same class as them, it was another moment in my life where I was like, from Mississauga First Nation to Manhattan, New York City, in the XL headquarters, with the CEO and the founder of XL signing a record deal. I was like, it changed everything. And the show and tell will continue. We put out this record, and so my band Single Mothers, which is the group this was called, we put out this record called Negative Qualities. And we started our journey, and my journey as a professional musician took off. Like, I was traveling in the first year, I was traveling like 6 months out of 12 months of the year. The second year was even more, and I had less time at home, like 3 months at home, and I was always on the road. I was living my dream. But what they didn't tell me was that it was like maybe some of the most grueling and some of the most like hard experiences I would ever have. But I was grateful because I was doing it, right? I took that chance, and I followed my passion, and it took me all around the world. I've been all over Europe, England, Mexico, North America, to pretty much every major city several times over, and I'm so grateful for that. But here's the funny thing. In my entire experience in that, those from like 2008 to like 2015, when I was with this group and we were traveling, playing major festivals, meeting my heroes, right? Not once did I ever come across another Nietzsche. You know, I didn't see anybody that looked like myself at any point while I was traveling or was making music. That was something that was always in the back of my mind. I was always like, am I the only native guy in music? It sounds ridiculous now, but you know, where I was and where the music industry was at that point in time is like, I honestly did not meet another native person in my travels. Met people from all walks of life, but you know, I like other musicians. Instagram wasn't a thing then. Like, it wasn't as big as it is now. There was no network to meet other people that looked like me, that had the same feelings as me. And the first time I really ever experienced that was at the Idle No More protest, the very first Idle No More protest in Ottawa, Ontario, where Chief Teresa Spence went on a hunger strike. And she demanded that the First Nations water crisis and all the boil water advisories happening across the country be looked at, and had, you know, that something be done about it. Now, at the time, the Canadian government was really not that concerned about these Indigenous issues. It was not at the forefront of the conversation. And to give you a little perspective on this, like, you know, it's a little personal too, is that the entire time I was on the reserve, I was looking for a reason to get off the reserve. I wanted to come to the city. I wanted to not have to, you know, live on the reserve. And yeah, maybe there was a sense of shame, but there was as much shame as there was curiosity, because I just didn't know any better, right? And when in 2012, when Teresa Spence went on that hunger strike and that march happened, they were loading buses up here downtown Toronto to go to Ottawa. And at that time, I was like, I felt compelled. I got a bag together, I brought my guitar, and I went down to that bus, and I jumped on the bus, and there was like dozens of buses driving from Toronto to Ottawa. And it was all natives, and it was all allies, and it was the first time I had ever in my entire life, like, gained a sense of pride. You know, like, it was such a beautiful day, despite it being like a terrible snow day, to witness the strength of our community as First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Afro-Indigenous people, to see all of us there. I choke up just thinking about it. Sorry. Yeah, so that was the first moment that, you know, I was like, damn, this is cool. But I was so involved with my group and so involved with, like, just rock and roll, you know what I mean? Like, the rock and roll lifestyle. I just kind of tucked it back in the back of my head. I was like, that was awesome, you know, like, but I don't know anything about my community still. And those last few years on the road between 2012 and 2015, I guess you can say now in retrospect, like, I had some wild years, you know what I mean? Everything you hear about rock and roll is like, you know, that was there in front of me. And yeah, I put myself through, like, hell for a couple of years, you might say, but I learned a lot. And by the time I was 25, I was like, I'm so over this. Like, I can't live like this anymore. And it was a comfortable lifestyle. Like, I'm not complaining about having to travel, having some money in my pocket, getting to play music every night. Like, that, so many people, like 99% of people who decide to play music don't get that opportunity. I'm so grateful. But after 7 years, it really wore me down. I just needed something different, you know? And I decided to leave. I didn't know what I was going to do, actually. I knew music would always be a part of my life, but I need to do something different. And, you know, I'm grateful for all these artifacts that I have here. I'm grateful that, you know, this little logo that I designed, one, I got to work with Cleon Peterson, one of the most amazing visual artists in the last decade. Like, I found him on Instagram when Instagram was in its infancy. and got to work with him. And now he hangs galleries all over the world. Like, for a kid from Mississauga First Nation, I'm pretty proud of that. I got this little design that I made that I spray painted on a bed sheet when I was in first year college. This little dream catcher made its way onto a record that literally has been sold all over the world: Germany, Japan, Australia. Again, just those little moments, you got to be so grateful, you know? But I needed to change things. I needed a different approach. And, you know, that led me to write my own music and share my own stories. So what did I do? I just went back to the drawing board. Yeah, maybe I wasn't going to play rock and roll or punk rock or anything like that, but I had a guitar. I knew what I was doing there. So I started looking for stories, and everything I wrote at that point just did not connect. It felt a little contrived. It felt a little kind of not authentic, you know, which is something just doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. My gut was telling me I wasn't saying anything that mattered. And, you know, when I had to take accountability of the stories I was telling, I had to look at myself. I had to look at my community. I had to look at the things that are going on around me, right? And I discovered this book by a writer at the Toronto Star at the time, called The Ballad of Danny Wolfe. And for those of you who might not know who Danny Wolfe was, he was one of the founding members of the Indian Posse, which is a street gang out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. And it was just a little blip. It was a book review he was a writer for the Globe and Mail, the guy who wrote this book. It was a little blip, but it caught my eye. And I was like, light bulb moment. I'm going to buy this book and I'm going to read it. And maybe there's a story in there. Maybe there's something to say. Because the music I really love playing and I really love listening to was the same music that I grew up with. My grandparents always had Loretta Lynn, Patsy Cline, George Jones, Hank Williams on the radio. Growing up with my mom, she always had Tom Petty, Blue Rodeo. So you get the picture, right? A lot of Americana, a lot of that kind of like roots music, heartland rock, you know? And the fascination with like stories of bandits and these sort of like murder ballads. For those of you into songwriting, you know what I'm talking about. That tells a specific story about somebody, and it's a little moment in time. I read this book, and the amount of time it takes me to sing the song Danny Wolfe was how long it took to write it. It was just like a lightning bolt. And I want to play that for you all now. You know, this is the first song that I wrote that I was proud of, that was mine, that said something about my culture and my identity, that I knew I was on the right path, you know? Again, even after I'd left the rock band, I was still getting all the bad songs out of me. And it wasn't until I wrote this song that I felt proud and I felt like it was honest. So I'm going to play that song for you now. It's a song that I wrote called Danny Wolfe. It's on the first EP I ever put out called Danny Wolfe and Two Other Stories. So yeah. father couldn't raise a son, took to the streets with his brothers, reclaiming them one by one. He had a way with loose ends, he made a name in the house, a simple taste of freedom, but wanted it all. When he would act out, when he was black out, when he was young and free, a sight to see before they cracked down, before they He was born in the heat of the summer, in the prairies where there's no high tide, nothing to do when you're younger, but live and die under a cloud of lies. He was born in the heat of the summer, nothing but his own self-pride. Bought a gun 'cause it was funner, taking things and always being denied. Then he would act out, when he was black out, when he was young and free, a sight to see before they cracked down. Then he would act out, when he was black out, when he was young and free, a sight to see before they cracked down, before they cracked down, before they So yeah, that's Danny Wolfe. That was the first song I wrote that was like, okay, I'm onto something here. Like the book's The Life of a Modern Outlaw. And I was like, this is an outlaw song, right? So I was like really stoked, and I really decided to, at that point, take that path. This, this is an Indigenous story that I felt connected to. And if I feel connected to it, then I hope that there's another Indigenous kid out there who feels connected to it as well. And that song, like, the lyrics are a bit more abstract and not as detailed as the life of this young man who, I'm not trying to glorify a lot of the maybe more violent things that he did in his life, but I'm trying to shed a little bit of light on someone who made the most of what they had. He made the most of what he had in his life. And it's basically what I wanted to shed a light on. And then maybe if somebody was so curious, pick up the book, read the story. I know there's a Vice documentary as well on the internet you could look at. So that's where it started. And since then, for the last few years now, I've been really focusing on stories that I feel connected to as a songwriter. I want to thank our moderator at the top of this session for quoting prayer, which I guess it could be the next song that I play for you. And that song, is about that silent connection we have with each other as Indigenous people. And I know for sure this is probably universal with a lot of people who have strong ties to their culture, not just Indigenous people, but that silent ani, that silent wink, that silent, little hello we say to each other on the street, because we just have that feeling. It's like Nietzsche radar. You know what I mean? Like, we just know. I wrote that song to sort of encompass that feeling I have with our cousins, our brothers, sisters, our aunts and uncles who might be living on the street, you know, like, to give them that sense of being and that sense of community. That's what prayer is about. So I'll play prayer. Reflecting light of some earthly fire below, alone in the night, with nowhere else to go. You uttered a prayer, not the religious kind, but a prayer you could buy sometime, another layer, and that the cold will let you go. Dull side of that knife, some stranger's piercing gaze, and the unrelenting city put you in this place. You uttered a prayer, not the religious kind, but a prayer we could buy sometime, another layer, and that the cold will let you go, that the cold will let you go. It's not the clothes on your back or the air in your waist, not the words that you might lack, but the world going up in flames. We utter prayer, not the religious kind, but a prayer we can buy sometime, another layer, and that the cold will let us go. We uttered a prayer, not the religious kind, but a prayer we can buy sometime, another layer, and that the cold will let us go. That the cold will let us go. So that's a little bit about what prayer is about. You know, that sense of connectedness and that sense of recognizing each other, and hopefully translating some sense of community to each other, you know, despite our circumstances. So that's what prayer is. And, you know, all these songs I'm playing for you now, the next few songs I'm playing anyways, are going to be about that. And, you know, as it relates to Indigenous resurgence and the resurgence of our stories and the responsibility that those of us who decide to tell stories have, they have to be done sensitively, but they have to be done honestly, you know. I look back on writing Danny Wolfe, and I look back on writing prayer, and I always think it could be better. This story could be translated better, you know. I have a story about a song that I wrote called Callahan, and a few years ago, after I left my band, I was trying to find my footing, and you know, I was going from sort of gig work, the gig economy, as it were, trying to take any opportunity, any job at that point, you know, that would keep food in my mouth and keep me creative and keep me downtown Toronto. One opportunity came across to go to Nunavut, I don't know how many people here have been up north, that far north, up to the territories or up to Nunavut, but this is an example of a responsibility to tell a story and hopefully tell it well enough, but maybe not be so specific. Was a song I wrote called Cal Ann, and I went and worked on an Avengers movie, like one of the first Avengers movies that was like a part of that whole 10-year trilogy we had. I was a part of a camera crew. We had to fly to Pengertung, Nunavut. I was one of about 8 people on the team to have to lug a bunch of camera equipment up to Thor's Peak. You can Google this, second most vertical peak in the entire world. And it was in the Pengertung Inlet or Fjord. To go get a bunch of camera shots and go get like a layout of the land, right? And we had these 2 porters and these 2 guides with us from Pengertung, from Pang as it's affectionately known as, very famous for their toques. I hope I don't sound like I'm rambling. Bobby, what was his name? Bobby became a really quick friend of mine, and we had a weekend hike to go to this fjord. It was a 126-kilometer hike with a bunch of camera gear, enough food, and all of our camping equipment, right? I got to know these guys really well, and we kicked it off from the jump, like right from the top of the week. We kicked it off because we are Nietzsche's, They're Inuit, and I'm First Nations, but our sense of humor and our sense of kinship, that dry sense of humor that we have, that was obvious. As soon as I got to meet these guys, we were hiking together the entire way in. And I got every opportunity that I could to pick their brain and really understand what life was like up there, 6 months of total darkness and 6 months of total light, the sun doesn't set for the entire summer and 4 to 5 months, and the sun doesn't come up for 4 to 5 months in the winter. And he told me how tough it was to find work at that point in time. This was a good gig for him. It was close to home, but you made some good money, right? And he told me about how he had to often go to the east or the west coast to go on the fishing boats. Those really, those dangerous, crazy fishing boats you see on those, television shows. That was his gig. So he was gone from his family and from his community for months at a time. So I connected with him right away, right? Like I felt like the same type of way in my travels, never really having roots, but having roots. And at the end of our trip, he took me back to meet his family. We ate together, on my way out, I got snowed in for an extra week. So I really had time to really check out this community, very small community. And got to meet his wife and his kid. And I was inspired to write a song. And I wanted to write a song for him, about him and for him. I wanted to do it respectfully. So that's how this next song came to be. It's called Cal Ann, and I named it after his daughter. And it's, the narrative is loosely based on like what that must feel like to leave home for long periods of time, to come back and just to deal with life changing, the world changing around you. So that's what this next song's about. It's called Callahan.
For a job, then they handed me a shovel. They could see how close to the edge I was. So I hopped a plane and jumped on the next train, headed for the Pacific coastal tide. Tell Callahan ain't coming home till winter's end. Her daddy has something to show for it.
get choked up when I sing this song. Now the words have up and gone, with the flora and the fauna, drifting under Mother Nature's spell. But we're still here in the bay as the ice caps wash away. The world spins on without us, I can tell. Tell Caroline you're coming home till winter's end, till her daddy has something to show for it. I'll make some money to send, there'll be no promises I bend. Let the light at the end of the long dark winter lead you there. Let the light at the end of the long dark winter lead you there. My mother, rest her soul, she died up in this cold, and created notes that I rest by her side. But not before my children eat and get everything they need, and learn to live with the ebbing of this life. Tell Caroline I'm coming home till winter's end, till her daddy has something to show for it. I'll make some money to send, there'll be no promises I bend. Let the light at the end of the long dark winter lead you there. Let the light at the end of the long dark winter lead you there. Let the light at the end of the long dark winter lead you there. So yeah, that's Cala Ann, and I wrote that around the same time, shortly after I wrote Danny Wolfe. So these songs were coming together, these little pieces were coming together, and I think I was starting to find my voice as a songwriter, and I felt obligated to tell stories because as Indigenous people, that's how we're still here today, you know, our oral history and the fact that we exist still, despite it all, is because of our stories. So I felt obligated and I felt a duty to do this. And you know, I think this was happening 2017 when I wrote these. This was all happening. This was something happening across Canada, that more Indigenous people were making art. They were telling stories, and you know, we were going through some growing pains too, right? We had issues at the time, and we were getting frustrated with the government, and there was a new government in place, and all these things that were happening around the world. We needed to tell our stories because it was the only way that we could get ahead. So Standing Rock was happening, right? No Dapple was happening. Idle No More. All these things, all these big moments across Canada invigorated the artists, and you could feel it. You know, I felt it. That's why I felt compelled to tell these stories and to raise awareness about what's going on across the country. And this idea of resurgence, I think, you know, and there are this idea of an Indigenous Renaissance. This was a long time coming. You know, we've long felt like we didn't have a voice or we couldn't be heard. But now I think with social media, with, you know, the internet, and at the speed of which we can communicate with each other, and we can find our kinships, we can find our community. We're here, you know, we're here to stay. We always have been, but now we're at the center of the conversation. And from 2012 up until recent, you know, there's just something I could never fathom. And I'm so happy and I'm so excited. I'm so proud of all these youth behind me, all these young people leading the conversation, leading the charge, being active, speaking their truth, speaking truth to power, taking up space. Like, so exciting. It is so exciting. And, you know, like, for me personally, I never felt, I never had that opportunity to be, one, because I didn't see myself in the world. I didn't see myself playing music. You know, as I said in my travels, I never seen another Indigenous, you know, punk rocker traveling the world. I didn't see an Indigenous person, like too many Indigenous people from my community go off and go to college, you know. Didn't see people telling their own stories, you know. And I'm just so excited by this generation coming up that is leading that conversation. And I'm so happy that we're finally here. We're finally at the center of the conversation. We're being taken seriously, you know. When I was in college, I didn't even bother to look or know whether or not we had an Indigenous Student Services, right? In high school, my knowledge of residential school, my knowledge of my own culture was like a blip, like half a chapter in a history book, one semester in high school. That's in the past now. We're here. We're telling our stories. As it relates to activism, we got no choice, right? We got to do something about it. We got to, like, we see injustices and we do something about it. And that's what we're doing, you know? For instance, a couple of years ago, when the Nisga'a First Nation was on boil water advisory, you know, for the last 30 years, Grassy Narrows, my home community of Shoal Lake 39 and Shoal Lake 40, boil water advisory since before I was born, since the time I was born. So fed up. I said, you know what? We're going to do something about it. We have the momentum. We have the community. We have, you know, other people, allies looking out for us, giving us this space. And what we did was we planned a benefit in downtown Toronto. I have a little piece of merchandise here from that event, because I don't know if we are able to show that video. I'm not sure here.
Negative. Sorry, Evan.
No video? Okay, it's okay. I implore everybody to look it up. It was called the Wabi Nibi Review. We did a bunch of really rad shirts. This was a design we did. And we had over, there it is, Vision of Water, which is what that stands for. We had 12 artists, 12 singer-songwriters and bands such as July Talk, Ansley Simpson, and you know, leaders in our community, Serene Fox, Jesse Wente. They came out in support, and they were a part of this benefit in which we raised over almost $12,000 of gross donations, and we were able to, after expenses and making our merchandise and whatnot, send almost $10,000 to the Nisga'a First Nation, who were evacuated from the community with little support from the government. And we were able to help pay for all their hotel rooms at the time, which felt good, but it was a small act of justice, right? Because they're still dealing with that issue today. And I think there's more momentum and there's more mobility now more than ever. We're pushing the government to take a look at how do we right these wrongs. My home community of Shoal Lake 39 just finally last year opened Freedom Road, so they can drive in and get clean water now. They still don't have clean water, but they can drive there now. They can go and take the burden of having to walk across the frozen lake, or take, snow machines across the frozen lake in the winter, or wait for the barge in the summer. Things are changing, things are happening. And I just love artists, I love storytellers, because they're always the first ones there, you know what I mean? Yelling, and our women in our community, like we have to listen, we have to be patient, because our existence is resistance. And the fact that we're here and the fact that we get to tell these stories is like such a privilege and such an honor. And I'm so grateful again for Georgian for having me here. I'm just going to play a few more songs, and I want to talk more about how us as a community can come together and stay active and stay involved. Because here's the thing, there's so much happening right now, especially as it comes to like community activism. People ask me all the time, how do I get involved? How do I give back? How do I take part? There's so many moving parts. What you have to do is make more space for Indigenous folks with lived experiences. I talk about that. I talk about that with my friends all the time. You know what I mean? Is like, listen, now's the time for listening. I think, and at the same time, this work isn't linear. It's a circle. It's a very Western idea to think about progress as being linear, like a staircase going up. But as First Nations and Indigenous people, it's not. This work is cyclical. We return to our problems, and we return to the good stuff and the good moments and the good teachings in a circle. We need the reminders. We constantly need reminders. That's how we can be good allies, and that's how we can be good allies to each other. Everything happening in the world, especially in the last week or two, with these, these sort of these hate crimes against the Asian community. I need those reminders as an Indigenous person to look out and speak truth to power when I see injustices. We all need to take part in this work that is not linear, that is cyclical, right? And the more bad stuff we can push out of that circle, the better we are for it. And another thing I wanted to talk about was like social media. I struggle with social media personally because it's a great source of anxiety for me, but it's a great tool for change. Instagram, podcasts, books, Twitter, these are all so like amazing platforms. And I've learned so much, and I've given myself so many gifts through being able to listen to other people's stories on these platforms. But I always, 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 always encourage people to be kind to themselves and to take their time. Because, for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous folks, this work can feel like a lot at times. And it is a lot. Not one person has all the answers. And not one person is going to make all that change. It happens very slowly and over time. So when people ask me how they get involved, how do they stay active? How do they keep their head in the game? It's just be kind to yourself. That's the main thing, That's how we don't burn ourselves out or get frustrated or lose ourselves in this sort of like lose ourselves in an echo chamber, because that stuff can happen, right? I know for me, in the last little while, I've had to take a step back from all that sort of stuff and really hold myself accountable, to my community and my teachings, and my culture and where I come from. That's where my work starts. So that's what I encourage other people to do, and we're always learning and growing and healing and sharing. And this is a part of that work for me, is to be able to, tell my stories, share my songs, and sit down and talk to people who are willing to listen. Because our people never had that platform. I didn't have those opportunities in the past. I'm just so grateful I get to do that with everyone here today. And, I got a couple songs left, and I know we couldn't share the Wabi Nibi review video, but you can all find it. I have a YouTube channel. There's a clip there, and, it's like a little really well done video, like there's a part of a documentary about change in community. So check it out. It's called the Wabi Nibi review. there's a video there. You can see what we did. We mobilized in 11 days. You know, we had like 20 vendors from across Toronto, like really like vintage stores, tattoo artists, clothing designers, crafters. We had so many cool prizes, and we raised so much money and raised so much awareness, really. And I'm really proud of the work that we were able to do there. So go check that out. And I want to play this next song. It's a song that I wrote really recently. I'm really excited about. It's called "You Were Born," and it's about this idea that we're still here. You know, our existence is resistance. And if you haven't been really listening for the last few times, like, pay attention to the lyrics. It's what I pride myself in. I'm not much of a singer, to be honest with you. I really like the songs. I really like lyric. I really like being able to say something, you know, something that packs a punch in like 4 lines. That's always my objective. And I'm learning and I'm growing how to be a better songwriter. And, you know, I'm learning every day. I'm nowhere where I want to be. And for those of you interested in the art of songwriting, is that this is like a lifelong challenge for me. I think Bob Dylan said it best when he said, you know, my next song is my best song is my next song. You know, you're never satisfied with what you made, and you're never content, because the more life you have behind your songs, the more honest, the more personal, and the better they are. Like fine wine, I guess, you know. So I'm always pushing. I'm always learning. And again, this is not a linear thing. Always returning to how to be better, you know. So I'm just gonna do a couple more songs for you folks, because I think our time, we're coming close to an hour. We're coming close to an hour here. So I just want to get this one. This one's called "You Were Born." Cool. All right. 100 years with a barrel to my head. They thought they'd write the laws that'd wipe us out instead. You were born. Yeah, you were born. They gave us the names and waited circles around the sun. They thought they'd breed us out, but it only just begun, 'cause you were born. Yeah, you were born. You were not the only one. We fought and lost, you came undone. You were not the only one. We fought and lost, you came undone. You were born. A million ancestors, they live inside you now. Despite the century of horror they endowed, you were born. Yeah, you were born. You were not the only one. We fought and lost, you came undone. Cool. So that's just, we're almost at time here. So I'm just going to play one last song for everyone. And yeah, just a reminder, again, thank you. My name is Evan Redsky. If you joined us late, I'm from the Mississauga First Nation, and I currently reside in Tikaronto, downtown here. This last song, I really wanted to play for everyone because this one's a little more recent. It's called No Man's Land, but this is a protest song. This is a straight up activist protest song that I wanted to write because of all the things that are happening across the country, because of all the moments we're having, of injustices we're having as First Nations people. This one's called No Man's Land, and it's a brief history of us as First Nations people. It's a brief history of colonialism and a reminder to ourselves that, you know, we're just here, we're just visitors. No one actually holds any right, you know, to the land that we stand on, you know? So that's what this song's called. It's called No Man's Land. Again, I just want to say Chimigwech to everybody for listening, for tuning in, for joining us today. Huge Chimigwech to Georgian for having me today. Super grateful, and I'm really happy that everybody got to witness all the change makers this week. So thanks for having me. This is my last song called No Man's Land.
The seasons went just as they came. The sun rose and it fell the same. I was a kid back then, my soul on trial. In front of their God, no home for miles. And the Holy War rode into town. There's no looking back, only looking down. For the big house they built upon this land, before they called us Canadians. This is no man's land. It belonged to us and belonged to them. This is no man's land. From the prairie fires to the river's bend, my father died in that trial by fire. Water, they gave him a funeral pyre. The man he was just behind those eyes, shrouded beneath the white man's lies. But I don't blame you and I won't blame her. I can't blame a single thing upon this earth. For the same reason the seasons change, the same reason the leaves fall again. This is no man's land. It belonged to us and belonged to them. This is no man's land. From the prairie fires to the river's bend, this is no man's land. From the ancient ships to suburban bands, this is no man's land. From Oka to Parliament, this is no man's land. From Mexico to Washington, this is no man's land.
Jimmy Gwetch, everyone.
Wow, wow, wow. That was mind blowing. Honestly, Evan, thank you so much. I know I speak on behalf. I know that you couldn't actually see the chat that was going on, but the amount of love being put your way and the amount of inspiration that you just created for our group here today is spectacular.
So I'm happy to hear it.
Really, really amazing. And thank you for your generosity. Looking at the time, recognizing we don't have time for a huge Q&A, but I was really reflecting as Evan was giving his keynote that, fascinatingly enough, Evan's such a compelling speaker that he actually answers a lot of those questions, those natural questions that would come up. There wasn't, you know, you didn't leave all that sort of on the outside of like, here's just my content. What an authentic experience for everyone that I genuinely feel like, you know, I was listening to a friend sort of talk. So that was really spectacular. Evan, are you comfortable if we ask just a couple of questions that wound up coming through the chat before we go today?
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Awesome. Okay, so for those following the chat, we dropped some of the links in for Evan's website and towards his SoundCloud, some of that music. Definitely check it out. So the very first question actually comes from Abby, one of our students. What are some things that you hope the students would take away from today's sessions, from what you're sharing with everyone today?
Sorry, repeat that.
Sorry, Evan. What are some things you're hoping that students would take away from today's session?
Yeah, I just hope that, you know, the people just take their time. You know, people take their time and listen to each other. That's what it's about. You know, it's like that's what I'm forced to do as a musician and a songwriter. When I work with other people or when I go see a group that I love or somebody I respect, you're listening and you're learning, right? It's just this sort of world we're in right now. I think it's easy to get caught up in the shouting matches and sort of like clout chasing that happens online. That's not what our people are about. That's not what humanity is about. We're about listening and learning and taking our time with each other, right? So that's what I hope is a takeaway. You know, a few extra spins on Spotify and Apple Music's okay too, but
Beautifully blended, Evan. Love that. Yeah, great reminder again. So much of your story today was talking about reconnecting us to each other, to humanity, and remembering that part that we all share. Along those lines, I guess I was sort of curious, is today's session is music as a form of Indigenous resurgence. Why do you think music or the arts in general is such a powerful tool along that journey?
I think it is a powerful tool because the barriers aren't as large. So, you know, being an artist just takes a voice and it takes 2 feet to stand on, right? You know, you don't need a guitar, you don't need, you know, paint or brushes. Like if you're an artist and you're speaking truth to power, that's what makes it such a successful, useful tool for our people. Because a lot of other places where we are underrepresented or not represented, we're often met with much bigger barriers. I often think of sports, and you know, I grew up in a hockey town. I grew up playing hockey, and I grew up with so many incredible cousins and kin of mine who are Indigenous, who had financial barriers to really succeed and really, you know, make a name for themselves. That's just one example of a barrier I can think of that happens every single day to so many incredible Indigenous athletes. You know, it's something I'm passionate about too, right? Whereas art and the guitar, you know, this didn't take much. You know, like I mowed lawns and saved up for an entire summer to get myself an acoustic guitar in grade 7. You know, so yeah, it took $120 to get into, but you know, I encourage people to, those of you who don't feel like you have something to say, just try it. You never know.
Really wonderfully said. So one of those key takeaways is make sure that you do your lawn mowing, team. Like make sure that you oh, I'm kidding. No, that's awesome. Just a couple more, Evan, before we close up. This one was from Crystal. And in fairness, you gave so much insight and advice throughout the whole session that's maybe a little tough to answer right on the spot. But Crystal's question was, is there one piece of advice that you could give to someone, say a student, and knowing that you work with many youth in Toronto as a mentor, as an example, is there one piece of advice amongst others that you could offer?
Absolutely. I always I always try to remind the youth that I work with, because I do work with youth day to day as my day job. I work with Indigenous and First Nations youth. Take risks. I think despite whatever circumstance you might find yourself in, whether you're privileged enough to be in school, or maybe you might find yourself, having a bit more trouble getting a job or getting your feet on the ground, I say take risks, because you never know what's on the other side of taking risks. And for me, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't take all those risks at every single step. I don't know where I would be if I felt timid about it, or if I felt shy. And I always did. Don't get me wrong. Like everyone should feel nervous and anxious and fearful of taking risks. That's what comes with it, right? But the payoff is so great in the long run, and I can't picture my life going any other way when I look back on it now. Take those risks, always, 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 always.
Not only is that profound, but what a perfect connection to Changemaker and Residency Week too, where trying to make change and requires courage. It requires taking risks. And what we just saw and experienced for the last hour with Evan was watching the power of vulnerability and authenticity meet talent and hard work too, which is really, really special. So recognizing for all our students who are on their change-making journeys right now, directly from Evan, this concept about taking risk. One more question for you, Evan. You've mentioned our existence is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, because it felt very profound and kind of resonated deeply to me.
Absolutely. The fact that we're still here despite colonialism, despite literally every system that we have to live with in this country was set up for us to fail. It was set up for us to lose our culture, lose our sense of identity. The fact that we're here is a testament to our strength as a people and our strength as a culture and our kinship. You know what I mean? Like our existence, despite all of the terrible stuff, is resistance. So just being here, just, take a deep breath, close your eyes. You're here today. That's what I always tell the Indigenous youth that I work with, right? Like, you don't have to worry about anything else. You're here, like all that other stuff is just sort of noise on your journey to being who you are and having your own voice and, standing on your own 2 feet. I guess that's what I'm getting at when I say existence is resistance. The fact that we're still here, still thriving, it acknowledges the long, hard history we've had. And the fact that we're here today, thriving and centering Indigenous voices, that's a sign that we're on the right path.
Spectacular. Once again, thank you so much, Evan, for sharing your talent, your light with us today. I know just from the comments and just how I'm feeling leaving this, that there could not have been a more spectacular, perfect way to end Changemaker and Residency Week. And so our deep gratitude to you and to Indigenous Services as well for supporting this in bringing this as our closure. A few thank yous as we end off our incredible week together. So specifically to Evan, to Emma, Indigenous Services. I want to say thank you to Co-op, to our peer mentors, our media services, our amazing different facilitators that came in, joined us along this week. And a very, very special thank you needs to go out to the team I'm blessed to work with every day, the team members from the Center for Change Making and Social Innovation. I love working with you guys. I know how much work you put into these last few weeks to try and make this an incredible, life-changing experience for students. And I'm really, really honored to get to work beside each of you each and every day. To our students, thank you for joining us for this week. It is the end of week 9. We're at the end of week 9. Well, you only have a few weeks to go. So we want to, from everyone at the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation, we want to wish you a really, really fantastic weekend, a wonderful last few weeks of term as we finish up. And we hope that we get to see all of you at our next Changemaker Residency Week. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you down the road.